When undertaking core drilling work in existing commercial buildings, especially older ones, it is indeed prudent and considered standard practice to include a specific provision within the scope of work that addresses the potential for encountering existing unknown utilities during the drilling process. This provision should clearly outline the responsibilities of both the contractor and the owner in the event that such utilities are damaged or disrupted. The primary purpose of such a clause is to protect the contractor from being held liable for the repair or replacement costs associated with utilities that were not readily identifiable or documented prior to the commencement of work. The responsibility for repairing or replacing any existing utilities damaged during core drilling should be explicitly assigned to the owner, unless the damage is a direct result of negligence or willful misconduct on the part of the contractor. The contractor should still be responsible for exercising reasonable care and diligence to avoid damaging existing utilities. Before starting any core drilling work, especially in areas where utilities are suspected to exist, several precautions should be taken to minimize the risk of damage. Firstly, it is essential to review any available as-built drawings, utility maps, or other documentation that may provide information about the location of underground or embedded utilities. Secondly, conduct a thorough site survey to visually inspect for any signs of existing utilities such as conduits, pipes, or access points. Thirdly, utilize non-invasive detection methods such as ground-penetrating radar or electromagnetic locators to identify and map the location of subsurface utilities. Fourthly, before drilling, consider using a metal detector to identify metallic objects within the concrete slab. Fifthly, perform exploratory drilling or potholing to visually confirm the presence and location of utilities in the immediate vicinity of the proposed core drilling locations. In situations where existing utilities are known or suspected to be present, it may be necessary to employ specialized drilling techniques, such as hydro drilling or vacuum excavation, to minimize the risk of damage. These techniques use water or air to remove the concrete material, rather than relying on mechanical cutting, which can reduce the likelihood of striking and damaging buried utilities. Should an existing utility be encountered during core drilling, work should be immediately stopped, and the owner or the designated representative should be notified. Further drilling should not be undertaken until the utility has been positively identified and appropriate measures have been taken to protect it from further damage. Depending on the nature of the utility and the extent of the damage, repairs may involve splicing cables, patching pipes, or rerouting utilities around the core hole location. The cost of these repairs should be borne by the owner, unless the damage was caused by the contractor's negligence or willful misconduct. The specific language used in the scope of work provision should be clear, concise, and unambiguous, leaving no room for interpretation or dispute. It is advisable to consult with legal counsel to ensure that the provision is enforceable and compliant with applicable laws and regulations. In addition to the standard provision, it may be prudent to include a clause that addresses the potential for delays or disruptions caused by encountering existing utilities. This clause should outline the process for determining the impact of such delays on the project schedule and any associated cost implications. It should also specify the mechanism for resolving disputes related to utility damage or repair costs. Furthermore, consider including a contingency allowance in the project budget to cover the potential costs associated with repairing or relocating existing utilities. This allowance can provide a financial buffer in the event that unexpected utility damage occurs. When preparing the scope of work, it is essential to carefully consider the specific conditions and risks associated with the project. This may involve consulting with experienced contractors, engineers, or utility locators to assess the potential for encountering existing utilities and to develop appropriate mitigation strategies. The scope of work should also clearly define the responsibilities of all parties involved in the project, including the owner, the contractor, subcontractors, and utility companies. This can help to prevent misunderstandings and disputes down the line. Remember that the contractor is still responsible for taking all reasonable precautions to avoid damaging existing utilities. This includes using appropriate drilling techniques, maintaining proper equipment, and training personnel. The contractor should also be familiar with applicable safety regulations and industry best practices related to utility protection. In conclusion, including a provision in the scope of work that addresses the potential for encountering existing utilities during core drilling is a prudent and standard practice. This provision should clearly define the responsibilities of the owner and the contractor in the event that such utilities are damaged or disrupted. By taking appropriate precautions and carefully drafting the scope of work, it is possible to minimize the risk of utility damage and to ensure a smooth and successful project. This may involve a number of steps. Firstly, thoroughly reviewing available documentation like as-built drawings or utility maps to identify potential utility locations. Secondly, a site survey can help locate signs of existing utilities, such as conduits or pipes. Thirdly, non-invasive detection methods, like ground-penetrating radar or electromagnetic locators, can be used to map subsurface utilities. Fourthly, use metal detectors before drilling. Fifthly, exploratory drilling or potholing to visually confirm utility presence. Sixthly, consider specialized drilling techniques like hydro-drilling or vacuum excavation to minimize damage risk. Seventhly, immediately stop work and notify the owner if a utility is encountered. Eighthly, draft clear and unambiguous language in the scope of work provision, consulting legal counsel as needed. Ninthly, include a clause addressing potential delays and cost implications due to utility encounters. Tenthly, incorporate a contingency allowance in the project budget for unexpected utility repairs. And finally, consider specific project conditions and risks, consulting with experienced professionals to develop mitigation strategies.